Namaste and welcome back to the HTML class. My dear friend, over the last couple of classes we have accumulated knowledge about a variety of HTML tags. In fact, these are all the different tags about which we have learnt a lot about. But what if I told you that some of these tags belong to one group, the other tags belong to another group. All these tags are one group, these tags are another group. What do I mean by this if you ask me? Please understand, all these group of tags, I would like to categorize them as block elements. Whereas the other group of tags, I would like to categorize them as inline elements. What do you mean by block elements? What do you mean by inline elements? And how does this impact the final output of your web page? And more is the topic of discussion in today's video. So if you're as excited as me to understand the difference about block elements and inline elements, stay tuned. Now it's time for us to understand what do you mean by block elements. To help you understand block elements, I'm going to use three block elements, which is the H1, H2 and the P tags. All three are block elements. Now what do we mean by this? Let me show you. I'm now going to go and write some code wherein first I will use the H1 tag because I want a big header and the biggest header is H1. So there I will tell web development like this. Web development is what I'm saying. Any confusion? Great. Next, I want a paragraph, so I'll put a P tag. After that, inside the P tag, this is the message that I will just paste. Web development is all about creating web applications, so like this. Next, what I want is a subheading. So I will use the H2 tag, like this, H2. And there I will tell front hyphen end, like this. Any confusion? Now I want another paragraph. So what I'm going to do is below that, I'm going to create another P tag and there this is the message which I will have. Makes use of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Any confusion till this point of time? Yes sir, we understood. Now I want you to look at the output and through the output understand why these are called as block elements, right? 3 points I'm going to specify. I want you to focus. If in case I take you to my output window and if in case I refresh, you can notice this is how the output looks like. Any confusion till this point of time? That is your H1, this is your P, this is your H2 and that is your P tag. Any confusion till this point of time? Now what I want you to understand is to help you visualize a block element, I am going to use a tool available in every browser called as the developer tools, right? Every browser gives you. Firefox gives you, Chrome gives you, Internet Explorer gives you. Since I am using the Chrome browser, how will you get access to it if you ask me? Please understand, you will have to right click. When you right click, all these options come. In that, you must go and click on inspect like this. If you click on inspect, you can see something has opened in the right side. Now what all this is, I will help you understand later in detail. But if I pull it a little bit more towards my side, I want you to focus on one button, which is that button on top called as the inspect button. I will click on that. After which I will drag it and keep it to the side because I don't need this anymore. So yeah, I'll click on that inspect button. Any confusion till here? Now, if I take the cursor on top of web development like this, do you notice it has got highlighted if I take it on top of web development? Did you notice? And there it is telling this is an H1 tag. Not only that, clearly I want you to observe three things. First and foremost, this element web development, it has taken the entire width of the screen, entire width from that end till this end. How much ever screen is available or the browser, the entire width of the screen it has occupied. Number two, after web development, clearly you can notice that it has forced a new line. It has forced a new line. Do you see this gap here? This is called as a line break. It forces a new line. Any confusion? So, I hope these 2 points are crystal clear to you. First of all, it occupies the entire width. Second one is that it forces a new line. Any confusion till here? Similarly, if in case I go to the next element, which is the P tag. Did you notice here also entire width it has taken? Look at that blue color thing. Though the paragraph ended here, still it takes the entire width. It takes the entire width. Not only that, Second thing that I want you to observe is, the moment this paragraph is over, whatever content is over, it has forced a line break, a new line. This one forced a line break, this is also forcing a line break. Is this 2 points crystal clear? Similarly, if I go to the H2 tag, watch it. This is H2. Here also, entire width forces a line break. If I go to the next P tag, you can notice it takes the entire width, also it forces a line break. And the third and most important point is, if you have multiple block elements, automatically the block elements are by default placed one below the other. It is always placed one below the other. Now the first 2 points you would have agreed. But the third point, when I say it is placed one below the other, you may disagree, because you may say that in the code, sir, you have written it one below the other, that is why. Write it one next to the other and prove it, you might say. Let me show you. If I take you back to my editor, I will cut that P tag and I will paste it after that H1 tag. See there? Similarly, the next P tag I will cut, not the H2. The next P tag I will cut and I will paste it after the H2 tag. Any confusion? Now, technically, according to you, web development, after that this should come. Then front end, after that this should come. No. They are block elements. The moment web development comes, after which a line break is forced, and then only the contents of P tag will come. After the contents of P tag come, it forces a line break, then front end will come. After front end, it forces a line break, only then this P tag will come. It doesn't matter how you write it. Or really, you might ask, let me take you to my browser window, and there, if in case I refresh it, nothing new would have happened. It remains the same. If I take the cursor on web development, you can see entire width forces a line break. Next line, entire width forces a line break. Next line, entire width forces a line break. Entire width forces a line break. Any confusion till this point of time? So I hope the 3 key points about a block element is clear. Occupies the entire width, first and foremost. After its content forces a line break, second thing, and block elements are always placed one below the other. Any confusion till this point of time? Now you will be curious, what is the difference between a block element and an inline element? Let me show you. If I take you back to my code, now to demonstrate inline elements, I am going to use 2 tags. There are so many inline tags. I am using 2 tags. One is the bold, other is the italic tag, B tag and I tag. Now observe what I am trying to say carefully. If in case I bring it back one below the other, because readability increases, and you now have agreed to me that yes, it comes this way itself. Now the thing is, inside this web development is all about creating web applications. What I want is, maybe I want this development to be bold. So I will put it inside the B tag. Like this, I will put it inside the B tag. Other slash. Any confusion till here? Other slash. I hope I am clear till here. Now, this is called as an inline element. Highlight that. Why is this called as an inline element, if you ask me? It's very different from a block element. Now, the block element occupied the entire width of the screen, but the inline element will only occupy as much space as is required. Second thing, soon after a block element ended, it forced a line break. Soon after an inline element ends, it will not force a line break. If you have multiple inline elements, they will be placed one next to the other, never one below the other. Really, you might ask, let me execute and show you. If in case I take you to my execution window, and if in case I refresh this, you can notice development has become bold. If I take the cursor to this, first take it to the block tag, that is the H2 tag or the P tag, yes. This is the entire thing. Inside the block, there is an inline thing. If I take the cursor to the inline one, do you notice clearly? First of all, look at the width. Entire screen or only as much as is required? Only, as you can see, as much as is required. That's all. Next thing that you can clearly observe is that after the element, did it force a line break? Did the next word, which is come in the next line? No. Which means it does not force a line break. So I hope those 2 points are clear. The difference between block and inline is clear. But what if you have multiple block or inline elements, you might ask. Okay, fine. Let me do one more thing. Let me make that is also as bold and show you. If in case I go back to my browser window, I will put is also inside the B tag like this. I will put is also inside the B tag like this. Any confusion till here? Now, if in case I do this, you have put an extra B. Remove that. So in these editors, if you put slash, automatically it will fill in for you. You need not type it again. I hope you're able to think. Next, what you might ask? If in case I now go and if in case I refresh it, you can notice like this is also bold. So take it to development. This is an inline tag. Take it to is. Is also an inline tag. They are one next to the other because they do not force line break. Just to give you one more example, let me make this web as italic, right? Let me make web as italic. So if in case I go back, I will put web inside the I tag like this. And there, see, I'll just put bracket and slash, automatically it will fill. Did you notice? Make sure you are coding to get this practice. Otherwise, you will also keep getting stuck like this. Any confusion till this point of time? Now, if in case I go back to my thing and if I just refresh it, you can notice this is italic. Take the cursor to web. This is a inline tag, right? Tag also it is telling I don't know if you can see, but I want you to go and try it in your browser window. But it did not force a line break. It only took as much width as is required. And all the inline elements are always one next to the other. They are placed one next to the other if you have multiple inline elements. So I hope crystal clear the difference between both is clear to you. Now, let me just in a tabular format list out the differences for you. Now, to list out the differences, let me make two columns. The first column is block elements, the second column is inline elements. If you understood clearly, then the first difference is that block elements occupy the entire width of the screen, whereas inline elements occupy only as much width as is required. The second difference is block elements always force a line break. Inline elements do not force a line break. The third difference is that when you have multiple block elements are placed one below the other. But when you have multiple inline elements, they are always placed one next to the other, and this is because of the second difference, which is they do not force a line break. I hope these three things are clear to all of you. Alright my friend, now I would like to introduce you to another tag which will play a very important role now that you understood the difference between a block element and an inline element. Now what do I mean? Please watch this. This is the code which I have. So if you look at it, this is H1 tag, web development. Then there's a paragraph tag where I told web development is all about creating web applications. A web application contains three layers: front end, your back end, and database. Any confusion till here? Now, clearly you know these two elements are block elements. So if I execute it, what will the output look like? So watch it. If I take you to my browser window and if I just refresh it, this is the output, as you can see. Any confusion till here? Now, let me bring up the developer tools by telling right click inspect. If I do, it has come. And if I inspect this P tag, you can notice clearly that it is a block element, occupies the entire width of the screen. But here I have a small problem. The thing is, how I want it is, a web development is all about creating web applications. Then, after this full stop, this next line, a web application contains three layers, front end, back end, database, should come in the next line. But unfortunately, how a block element by default works is, a line break is induced only at the end of the content placed in between the tag. So only after database line break comes, nowhere in between. But in between I want a line break. Is there a way to forcefully induce it? Definitely. There is a tag for that also. Which is the tag? Let me show you. If I go back to my editor, then please understand, the tag which you would now be using is a tag called as the BR tag. Now this BR tag is unique because it doesn't require a closing tag. It's a self-closing tag. Automatically it will close itself, right? So watch it carefully. Where do I want a line break? After this full stop, isn't it? So after the full stop, I will take the cursor and there I will put BR like this. Any confusion? That's it. No need to put closing. This is called as line break. automatically after full stop, it will break and force a new line. So this a web application will come in the next line. Really will it work? 100%. If in case I take you back to my browser and if I refresh this page, you can notice the output has changed, and if I still inspect it, this is still a block element. This is still a p tag, but within the p tag the content has come in multiple lines because you have forced a line break. And of course, at the end, after this database is full stop, being a block element, it will anyways force a line break. Any confusion till this point of time? Wonderful. So I hope block, inline element and the BR tag is crystal clear to all of you. Now let's move forward and learn the next concept, which is all about forms. Alright my friend, now it's time for you to learn about forms in HTML. Please understand, all these front-end technologies that you're investing your time and energy in learning is after all to ultimately create something called as a web application. Now you must understand, today's web applications have to take different variety of inputs from the user who's using the web application, and knowingly or unknowingly you must understand that you have been using forms all your life to provide input to a web application. If I have to give you a few examples you can immediately relate to, please understand, if in case I go to Facebook and I try to create a new account on Facebook, Facebook naturally is going to collect a lot of information from me, and this is nothing but a form. If in case you go to LinkedIn, you already have an account and you want to sign into your account, right? That is also nothing but a form, which is taking your email address and password. If in case you want to create a brand new Gmail account, then you must understand this is the form to sign into Gmail. If in case I go and click on create account, you can notice like this, another form opens up where variety of information you have to provide. Similarly, if you go to Tap Academy's website, and let us assume you wanted to enroll into the full stack web development course. If you click on inquire now, we also need your details, which is collected in the form of another form. I hope you're able to think, right? So forms is a crucial element which is present in each and every web application which is used in the modern world. Obviously, you now have to understand how to create forms, and for that there is an HTML tag and variety of different types of forms using that tag that we will be creating going ahead. So if you're as excited as me to learn about forms, stay tuned. Now that you guys understood that forms plays a critical role in a web application taking input from the user, I want you to now understand when we speak about inputs, there are a variety of inputs you can take from a user. To give you a better clarity about what I just spoke about, let me just bring up the Facebook sign up form. This is your traditional Facebook sign up form wherein you can create a new account by filling in these fields. If you look at it, what is the first field? The first field says first name, right? I will maybe give my first name, Rohit, like this. Now, I typed Rohit. Look at Rohit. What is Rohit? It's text type input. So don't you think input has a type associated with it? Similarly, surname, I'll call it as Ravinder. Now, don't you think that is another text type input? But the very next field in the form, which is asking me my mobile number or email address, you must understand, it's so unique that this field, it can take mobile type input, which is if I give a random mobile number like this. Don't try calling me on this number, it might go to someone else. Anyways, the point is that this is a number type input. Or if I remove this completely, I can also give email rohit@tapacademy.com is what I will tell. Now, this is certainly a valid mail ID. You can always mail me personally on this. But as you can see, this is email type input, right? Next, it is entering, and here it is telling re-enter the mail address. So I'll just copy and paste that again, like this. I hope it is clear. Next, password it is asking. Now you might, if I ask you what type of input is password, some of you might say text. I agree with you, it is text. But look at it. If I just try typing a password like this, look at it. Do you see it is not visible? Do you see that it is almost like protected or it is hidden? Hidden type data this is. So there is, or password type input this is. So there is clearly types. The next type is date type input. So I'll give my date of birth 10/4/1992 like this. So April and 1992. I will just change it there like this, right? So this is date type input. Then the next, can you notice there are 3 radio buttons. These are technically called as radio buttons, right? There are 3 options now. Earlier there were only 2 genders in this world, but there is a custom gender also now. Anyways, I am male, so I will just tell male like this. As you can see, one form can have different types of inputs, right? So what I am trying to tell you is, if I just remove this form, I want you to understand that even in form type inputs, there are different variety of inputs you can take. And if I have to list out the different types, these are all the different types of inputs you can take. Of course, I will not be discussing all of them, because if you get an idea about 1 or 2 of them, you will be able to automatically work with all the different types. But I hope the different types of input that you can have in a form is crystal clear for you. Now, let us take a simple example of a form and start our discussion. Alright my friend, now let's take an example to better understand how forms work. This is the form which I want to create. As you can see, there is a text called as name, followed by a box for me to enter the name of the individual, followed by a text called as mobile number, followed by a box for me to enter the mobile number, and of course a button called as submit, so that these details can be submitted, because a form is a form only if you can submit it to someone. They need your data, they need your input, is why they are given you a form, right? Now through this one simple example, you're going to understand a lot about how forms work in HTML, and I want your undivided attention. First and foremost, to tell HTML that you want to create a form, you have to use a tag. Which is the tag if you ask me? It's the form tag. So first I'm going to create the form tag like this. Watch it. Form tag I will create. Now I'll press enter. Now inside this you should tell, inside the form, what and all different inputs you want the form to take. Right? Different inputs the form takes. Here 2 inputs I am taking. So now the question is, how do you tell inside a form you have to take an input? Well, there is another tag for it, and the name of that tag is nothing but the input tag. Now you must understand something about the input tag. Input tag is a self-closing tag. So there is no need for you to give a closing tag. Just tell input. That's what I'm going to do. Like this I will tell input. Any confusion till here? No need to close it. Now if you just tell input, clearly the form will be confused, because just previously I told you a form can accept variety of inputs, different types of inputs. But you want the input which is going to be collected to be a text type input, right? How are you going to tell this? Very simple. You have to give additional information to the input tag. That input tag, I want to collect text type input. How do you give additional information to a tag? That is why tag attributes are there, and the attribute that I am going to use now is called as the type attribute. So watch it, I'll go inside, leave a space, and I'll just tell type like this. Any confusion? Now it is telling what is the type. I told you there are different types, but the type I need is text. So I'll just tell text like this. Any confusion? Now let me just execute this much and show you what things may look like. So if in case I just go back, and if I refresh the page, you can see one box came, where you can type the name out. Text you can type. If I just tell Rohit like this, definitely you can type it out. But if simply a box is provided to you, will you ever know what has to be typed inside it, what has to be filled inside it? Assume when you went to take your admission in your university, in your college, they gave you an admission form, right? Imagine there were only boxes in the admission form. Would you know what to fill where? Clearly not. So obviously there should be some text indicating what you have to fill inside the form. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my code, and in my code, on top of this input tag, I'm going to use a simple p tag, and inside the p tag I will tell name like this, and a colon I will put. Any confusion till this point of time? Wonderful. Now if I go back and I refresh the code, you can clearly see that above this, if I refresh it, name has come. Now you know, okay, it is name which you have to enter. So I hope whatever I've spoken about is clear to all of you. Similarly, let's create the mobile number and the box for it to be inputted. So if I go back, after this input, first I need a text saying mobile number, another p tag I will put. And there what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell mobile number like this, mobile number, and a colon I will put. Any confusion? Now below that you need to tell the form, hey form, you need to take another input. How do you do that? Input tag is there, so I'll tell input. But you know, simply by telling input there is no use. You have to tell what type of input. Well, please give the type attribute then. And what is the type? Here I want it to be number. So like this I will tell number. Any confusion? There are different types. I want you to explore all the types. In fact, I would have mentioned about all the types in the notes. Though here in the class I will only be demonstrating few of them. But I hope this is crystal clear to you. What does this look like? Let me show you. If in case I go back to my code and if in case I refresh it, then you can notice name and mobile number has clearly appeared, right? But in the name, let us see. Let me try typing Rohit. Definitely I can type it. In mobile number, let me try typing some mobile 10-digit number. I will just type it. So it works clearly. But what I want you to understand is, yes, you have filled the details in the form, but are you able to submit it? No, because clearly there is a lack of a button called as the submit button. How are we going to do this? Well, submit button is also another type of input which you will be providing to the form. So how are we going to do this? Let me show you. If in case I go back, please tell another input which you have to provide, and that is what I am going to do. I will leave enter, press enter and then input again. And here if you notice, just by telling input there is no use, type is very important. So I will tell type inside that. And what is type? You want it to be a submit button, right? You don't have to create any button. You just have to tell submit like this. The moment you tell, hey, the input type has to be submit, HTML is clever enough to create a button called as submit for you. Really will this happen, you might ask. If I go and refresh it, as you can see, submit button has come. But the submit button has come next to the number input. It has come next to the number input. But ideally, in best case, you want the submit button to come below. Now, why did it come on the same line if you ask me? Well, if you have just watched my previous video, you would not have this doubt because I told you there are two types of elements in HTML. Block elements, inline elements. Just by looking at this, can you predict your input element, your input tag, what type of element is it? Is it block or inline? Anyone with eyes can see that after this input and this input, in between there is no line break. If there is no line break, it means it's an inline element. And I can prove it to you. How? Let's use the developer tools. So if I right click and I click on inspect, then if I inspect this element here, as you can see, it has occupied only as much width as is required. More importantly, it has not caused a line break. Same is the case with submit. As you can see, it's an inline element. But the element on top, mobile number, that is a block element. Entire width forced a line break. Whereas this, the one on top, is an inline element. But the p tag on top of that is a block element. So think in terms of block and inline elements always as an HTML developer. It will definitely give you the much required clarity. But is there a way to force a break between two inline elements? Definitely there is. Using a tag called as the BR tag or the break tag. Let's go apply the break tag. If in case I go back to the HTML, what I will do is, after this number, there I'll just put a BR tag so a line break happens. That's it. And this is a self-closing tag. No need for you to give it a closing tag. If I do this, will things work? Watch it. If I refresh, submit has come down. Line break was forced. Wonderful, isn't it? Now, if in case I go inside name and I give my name as Rohit. Mobile number, I will give some 10-digit mobile number. If in case I were to press submit, as you can see, nothing happens. The data went, but nothing happened. Again, I will re-enter. If I just tell Rohit like this, and if I put some random mobile number, then you can clearly notice if I press submit, nothing happens. Why nothing happens? This I have to clarify. Please watch it. What you're expecting is, if somebody clicks submit, some kind of an action must happen. Because that is how your traditional websites are. If you fill the Facebook sign up form and you click on sign up, something happens, another web page opens up. If you go to Roomin website and you do an enquiry and you press submit, something happens. If you go to LinkedIn or Gmail or any such websites to sign in, you put your email address, you put your password and press login, something happens. Well, that is the action associated with the form. But if I take you back to my code, you can notice nowhere in the code you have mentioned what must be the action that this code must perform. when you submit the form. That you have not mentioned. How do I mention the action, Rohit? You might ask. Well, my friend, for that you must inform the form tag that after inputting all the data into the form and someone submits, what action must happen? You must tell the form tag. Well, how will I tell the form tag? Give it additional information. How will you give additional information? That is why attributes are there. And that is where one of the attributes of the form tag comes into play, called as the action attribute. Let's give the action attribute. So I will leave a space and I will tell action like this. It's asking, what should I do as an action? Now you must understand something, right? My friend, you are learning about the front end. But you must understand, front end is just a dummy piece of data without the raw processing power that the backend or the server provides. Yes, it is in the server where actual processing of the data happens. It is in the server where all different core programming languages such as Python, such as Java, such as C#, such as JavaScript, all these languages are running. Traditionally what happens is, right, if somebody presses submit, in the action you must mention to which server this form should connect to which server a request must be sent to. And how will you tell to which server a request must be sent to? That is why every server has its unique URL, right? In fact, the full form of URL is unique resource locator. Don't you think every server is a resource? You have to locate it. Like this in the world, so many server computers could be there. It could be in the millions, for all you know, it could be in the billions. Out of the millions and billions of computers out there, you want to identify one specific computer. That is why it has an address, it has a URL, right? Now, for example's sake, let us assume that this is the URL of the server I want to send this data to, and that is the URL I'm going to paste there, as you can see. In fact, this server is in my own computer. That is why it is 127.0.0.1, because this is called as local host, or this means the IP address of the same computer. More about this I would have spoken in depth in the backend courses. Stay tuned for that, but I hope this part is clear to you. Now what happens is, if somebody clicks on action, automatically a request is sent from here to the server, right? Along with the request, all this data which you filled inside that boxes is also sent. You know two types of data you send. One is the name, which is Rohit. Another is the mobile number. Let us assume like this. Now, I want you to think from the server's point of view. You are sending some data to the server, but does the server know what is that data? Some name you sent. How should the server know that it is name? Some number you send. How should the server know that it is mobile number? Don't you think there is clearly confusion here? After all, our form is collecting 2 inputs. There could be forms connecting 10 inputs. Clearly it will get confused what input stands for what. Is why it is very important that every input has a name associated with it, so that the value given to the input can be associated with the name and then sent to the server, so that the server can process the data in a much more efficient manner. Now, how Rohit can be associated name with the input, if you ask me? My friend, give that additional information to input. How to give additional information? That is where attributes come into the picture. Type is not the only attribute which you can have. You can have another attribute called as the name attribute. If in case I just tell name like this, you can see it is asking, okay, for the data entered into that input, what is the name I should attach? And I will tell name should be name itself, like this. Logical names you should give. After all, what you are entering is name, let it be name. Similarly, what you are entering here is mobile number, so I will give it a name. I will call it as mobile, like this. Any confusion till here? The moment you do this, as you can see, to this data that you are sending to the server, a name is also attached. So it will be name equal to Rohit, mobile equal to this. and that data is sent to the server. Now the server will take that data, will process that information, and after processing that information will send a response back to your browser. Now what is that response? Well, that is what the entire backend is about. How to take input from the front end, how to process that information or the request made by the front end and provide an appropriate response. Now let me show you what is the response which my server would have sent. So if in case I go back to my editor and I refresh it, you can notice nothing here changes. But if I give my name, and if in case I give a mobile number, and if in case I press submit, wow, thank you for your response. Who sent this to me? My server. Any confusion till that? In fact, a person who can work on both front end as well as back end and the database associated with it is someone called as a full stack web developer, which is the need of the hour and certainly in the future as well. So I hope you are as excited as me, not only to master front end but the back end technologies as well, because without which it will be an incomplete knowledge which you have, and incomplete knowledge is dangerous. In fact, zero knowledge is good, complete knowledge is even better. Incomplete knowledge is dangerous. It does not get you anywhere. But we are not aiming at becoming incomplete developers. We are aiming at becoming full stack developers, right? Any which way. Now I want to show you something interesting. The moment I press submit, if I go back, I will give if I press submit, the response came. But if I show you in that address bar on top, if I just copy that, because I know it's not visible to you, I will just copy that. If I go back to my editor, right, and if I just below the form press 2 times enter, yeah, and I'll just paste it here, you can notice this was created automatically by the browser. Now what is this if you ask me? This is called as a query string. What is a query string? First and foremost, look at it. Whatever you gave in the action, do you notice that is what has come first? Which means it is telling the moment you press submit, it connected to this server. That is what it is telling. It connected to the server. It could be www.google.com, facebook.com, myntra.com, jabong.com, ola.com, uber.com. It doesn't matter which server. It connected to that server. After which, it put a question mark. Do you notice that question mark? After that question mark, your query string begins. Now what is this query string? This query string is nothing but the data collected from the form. And if you look carefully, the first data is name. What is this name? This name is nothing but the name of that text field. And what is this Rohit? That is a value you typed into it. Name equal to Rohit. Then one more input you sent to separate both, one and in between. Do you notice that and in between? Then the next box, which is number, right? So see, mobile, followed by the value you typed into it. This is what is sent to the server. The server extracts this data, does the necessary processing and sends back a response. Any confusion till this point of time? I hope whatever I spoke about is crystal clear to all of you, and I think you got a good idea about how forms work in the internet. But we are not done with our discussion on forms. We have a lot more to discuss. Stay tuned for more. Alright my friend, let me show you how by adding additional attributes you can make your form better and better and better. See, for example, first and foremost, this name field. I want this to be mandatory. Nobody should be able to submit my form without entering something in the name. How can I ensure that? Simple. Add an attribute. Which is the attribute if you ask me? It's called as required, which is what I'm going to add. Required, like this. Now you must understand, the moment you tell required, there's no need to give it any value. I know, traditionally attributes means there is a name of the attribute, an assignment operator followed by the value. But required is an exception. You need not give anything. Not only that, I want to ensure that the name being entered should be minimum 5 characters long. Minimum length should be 5. How can I do that? Give that additional information. How? Using an attribute called as min length. That is what I'm going to do. Min length, I'll tell. And min length should be 5. Similarly, I want this mobile number also to be mandatory. So I will make it as required, like this. So I'll go there and make it as required. Any confusion till this point of time? If in case I do this much, how does the output change? Let me execute and show you. As you guys can see, the form looks the same, but look at the difference. If I do not fill anything in the name and mobile number and directly try to press submit, you can notice, please fill out this field. Why this is required. So I will go there and I will just put my name Rohit like this. Now, I will not give mobile number, but if I press submit, as you can notice, it is telling me please fill out this field. Okay, I'll give my mobile number as well. If in case now I press submit, it works perfectly. If I go back, if I try to remove the T, now tell me, is it 5 characters in length? No, minimum length is not satisfied. If I click on submit, it is telling me please lengthen this text to 5 characters or more. You are currently using 4 characters. Beautiful, isn't it? This is why attributes, the input attributes matter a lot. There are a lot of attributes. As and when what is required, I'll be using it because it's pointless discussing all of them. But I would have mentioned all of them in the notes, and it's up to you and your curiosity to go and try out all these attributes and check how well you have understood them and what is the difference it makes in your form.